Howdy, folks. Welcome to another day in the Milky Way. And believe it or not, it's just a beautiful day. And thank you all for coming. I'm just so happy to be here. I got a new thing for you. We're going to just do this thing on the Indian myths and legends kind of series I've been doing. So I've been learning a lot, and I come up with this new book. I told you guys I was going to come up with a new book, and here it is. Can't even read the cover too good. But anyway, it's really old. Yeah, I'll show you. So I can't even see the stuff on it. I've been looking at it, and what does it say? Yeah, something me and the Indians or something like that. You're gonna say, well, open the cover, and it says Mrs. Elizabeth and her book. Oh, it says Life Among. Yeah, I guess I should have just looked into the inside of the cover of the book. Go figure. I wasn't thinking, but here it is. It's Life Among the Indians, or Personal Reminiscences and Historical Incidents. And it's got illustrations, Indian Life and Character by Reverend James B. Finley. Now, I don't know, this book is really old. I think it's right around the 1800s, early 1800s. I figured from looking at the book, it's from like 1840, 1850 and stuff like that. And you'll see that throughout with the references and stuff so far I can see. So as much as I can look at this book, it's right in the area of 1840 and 1850. So this goes way back. And even when it starts out, it's talking about, you know, being back in the late 1700s. So anyway, I thought I can't download the PDF for it. I just can't find it. But if one of you can find it out there, I would be happy if you could send it to me, and we could pass it out to everybody else, and I could put it on screen. But since it's such an old book, it was either that or type everything out, or guess what? You're just going to have to listen along with me. So we're doing this the best we can. So I hope you can all bear with me, and we'll go from there. We got this thing going on, and I hope you learn as much as I am, because so far I've read through this, and it sounds really interesting. Now, okay, so we're going to start out with the preface. It kind of gives you a little dynamics of what the book's going to be and how it's going to go. And so you guys just bear with me, and we'll just get started. Okay. No living man probably has seen and known more of the Indians in the Northwest than myself. During almost 70 years, I have been among them, and it's got really weird words in here too, because it's just, it has stuff. So just bear with me on the part where the words and things are a little bit different than what we're normally talking about. And even in the book so far, I've noticed it's either wrong spelling as I know it, or they spell it intentionally, and it's going to make it hard for me to read a little bit. And so I'm going to just do the best I can, and I know that you will all appreciate this when I'm done. Thanks. During almost 70 years, I've been among them, and have been acquainted with their principal men, studied their history, character, and manner of life. With me, it has not been, as with most who have written about them, a mere matter of theory, for I've been among them, hunted and fished with them, ate and lodged in their wigwams, and have subjected to all the labors, excitement, perils, and privatization of life among them. In this long experience and observation, I have gathered up many things which I thought worthy of record. Some of them occurred in my experience as a missionary among them. Kentucky, Ohio, Indiana, and Michigan were the great battlefields where barbarism and civilization in the West. My acquaintance acquaintance extended over all of these states, and there is scarcely a spot celebrated in Indian warfare where I have not visited again and again. Tales of Indian life and warfare were entertainments of my childhood, and realities of these things were among the experiences of my manhood. Now, when the scene is nearly over with me on earth, I have gathered up the reminiscence of the past to amuse and instruct the generations of a later age. Those who enjoy so goodly a heritage in the vast region ought to know through the trials and perils their forefathers obtained for them. I have endeavored to connect the facts narrated in these pages so as to give a consented view of the Indian history in the Northwest. In fact, preparation of the work I am indebted to Flint, McDonald, Drake's Schoolcraft, and others. Colonel M. McDonald's work was written in my suggestion, and a portion of the material was also furnished by me. Consequently, I have felt free to draw upon it. The work of Mr. Flint is rich in the materials of history, but they are also entirely commingled without system and to detract much of its value. This work is also out of print, and I have gleaned from it some narrations and interests. But the great body of the matter has been gleaned from my own resources, not a little of it, indeed, connected with my own experience. Thus I sent this work out, hoping that it embodies some historical elements and some practical lessons that may be useful to those who now live, and also to those who shall come after the author. So that's why I chose this book, is because it's written by somebody who's actually there, mostly his experiences. And I read some of this in the beginning here, and it seemed really good. It goes by chapters. It's really weird how they put this together. But I thought it was well worth giving it a try. And if this goes really good, give me a thumbs up. Let me know what you think. And if you like it, well, I'll keep reading. I'm going to do as much as I can tonight and get as much done in this short amount of time. And when my eyes get tired and I can't read no more, we're going to call it good. But for the most part, we'll put a bookmarker in it and I give it a go again, and we'll see what happens. But remind me, if you like it, let me know. Send me an email, give me a thumbs up, something, and we'll continue. And I'm sure you all want to know what the end of the story is. But the book is, kind of thick. I'll read as fast as I can. You just listen. Enjoy. Okay, Chapter 1, Life Among the Indians. Removal to the Northwestern Territory. In the spring of 1796, I emigrated to the Northwestern Territory and commenced planting corn on the prairie. A little below where the Chickasaw now stands, this country was then a dense wilderness. There was not even a blazed path connecting with the Wheeling, Virginia, or the Mayville, Kentucky, nor was there a single inhabitant along all of the route. Civilization now began to assert the supremacy of their claim to the uncivilized or uncultivated land over which the native savage and the wild beasts had roamed for untold ages. This was in reality life among the Indians, and especially was the commencement of a series of events in my personal history as related to the Indians, which I designed to record in this volume. My father, after immigrating to Kentucky, purchased some land and settled near the present town of Flemingsburg. Yeah, I guess that's right, Flemingsburg. I don't know where that is exactly, but okay. There was, in 1789, ours was the frontier house of the settlement, and we were much exposed to the incursions of exposed to the incursions of the Indians and the wild beasts. The next year, we moved to Bourbon County. There, my father ministered 2 congregations, one at Cane Ridge, the other at Concord. Both were prosperous in high degree, but we found here also causes a serious discontent. There was great uncertainty among the settlers, and as to the title of their lands. Some of them had spent their last farthings in the purchase of their lands, and then, after encountering all the dangers and toils of pioneer life in clearing and bringing them under cultivation, some other claimant would come and dispose of them and their homes. In such causes, there was often no redress. The unprincipled specular, having sold his spurious title, would disappear, and when the defrauded settler discovered that his claim was worthless, could not be found. My father was also utterly opposed to this system of slavery which prevailed in Kentucky and had liberated his slaves. This brought down upon him the ill will and persecution of the fiery advocates of the system. The main body of both congregations, however, strongly sympathized with him in his anti-slavery views, and the mutual ties that bound them together were so strong that nearly the whole of them finally immigrated with him to Northwestern Territory. While this state of things existed in Kentucky, aside of the river, their attention was drawn to the rich lands of the Chino Valley, or Cino Valley. Anyway, these lands had been surveyed, I know I messed that up, been surveyed by Colonel Massey in 1792, and he gave the most glowing accounts of the fertility of the soil and the beauty of the scenery. My father, in the later part of 1794, opened a negotiation with Massey for the tract from 15 to 20 miles square for the settlement of his 2 congregations and such other friends, some from eastern Pennsylvania, as might choose to join him. On the succeeding March, Colonel Massey visited him in his residence. Here he had an interview with a large company of those who were anxious to immigrate, and arrangements for those purposes were made. A day was fixed upon for the general rendezvous of Massey's station. Now Manchester and my father took immediate measures to apprise his friends in the east of the arrangements and the prospects of the enterprise. Massey's station was about 12 miles from Maysville, but upon the opposite side of the river. The settlement had been made in 1791 and now consisted of about 30 families. They were strongly entrenched in their log cabins, and the whole town was enclosed with strong pickets firmly fixed in the ground with block houses at each angle for defense. Though the most desperate Indian war was then raging, the fearful barbarities were committed by the savages. This settlement, owing to its excellent preparations for defense and watchfulness of the brave spirits that guarded it, suffered comparatively little. Even their agricultural labors were persecuted with comparatively safety, for having cleared the lowest of page. These are brittle pages too. The 3 islands which were in the river just opposite to their settlement. They planted it with corn. The soil was very rich and the crops abundant, so that the wants of the little settlement were abundantly supplied. Besides this, there were at this time only 2 settlements on the northwestern bank of the Ohio, one at the Columbia, 8 miles above Cincinnati, and one at the Galapagos? Galapagos, near the mouth of the Great Kawana, and there were gems. I love how they phrase this stuff. There were the gems, it says germ, Germs, of the Great Northern Western states, which now in population, enterprise, wealth, and refinement take their rank as stars of the first magnitude in the glorious constellation of our Union. The location of the 3 islands was the headquarters of Massey's surveying party. From this point, he went out in every direction, surveying the country and making locations. An incident may illustrate the perilous nature of his work. It was his invariable rule to keep spies around him, and if signs of Indians in the neighborhood were discovered, he would retire to his strongly fortified post. At one time, however, in the spring of 1792, while prosecuting his surveys, accompanied by 3 men, one of them named Donaldson, a party of Indians suddenly came upon them. Fortunately, the Indians had left their arms in the canoe at the landing. Massey and his party fled. The Indians, horrified yells pursued them. Descending a hill, the party had to leap a ravine some 12 feet in width and about the same depth. 3 of them succeeded in their effort. Okay, making the leap. But poor Donaldson failed to reach firm footing on the opposite bank and fell into the ditch. The other 3 made good on their escape to the station and gave the alarm. The next morning, the party and 20 men, Massey returned to learn the fate of his companion and to rescue him, if possible. He found that Donaldson had evidently been captured and taken by the Indians. He pursued their trail some distance, but found no chance to surprise them, and knowing that if the Indians were aware of his pursuit, that they would immediately butcher the unfortunate Donaldson, while if left unmolested, they might spare him till he found some chance to escape. He gave over the pursuit. He judged rightly. Donaldson finally escaped. When he made his unfortunate plunge, the foremost Indian was close to his heels and instantly leaped upon him, tomahawk in hand. Donaldson immediately surrendered and was made a prisoner. The party consisted of 8 or 10 Indians who had been trapping up in the Big Sandy and were now on their return to Wanpakama, now Zanesfield, on Mad River. It was late in the evening when they took him, and they immediately loaded him their peltry and made a rapid march homeward. In a few days, he began to think about effecting his escape. Although the difficulties against which had to contend were great, owing to the extreme caution and watchfulness of the Indians. At night, they took strong tug of rope made of the rawhide of the buffalo or elk and fastened it around his body, each end of the tug being tied around the body of an Indian. And the tug was tied so tightly that it could not be slipped, nor could it be to one side or the other without drawing the Indian after him. It was from such a situation he had to extricate himself. One night, while the Indians were tying him after usual manner, he puffed up his body in full extent and by drawing in his breath. And when they had completed the process, he found that there was a good deal of play in the noose of the tug. He lay very still till the Indians were fast asleep. Then, having partly undressed himself, he began slowly and cautiously to slip from the noose. After a long trial, he succeeded and found himself once more free, or a free man. He instantly rushed to the thickets. The night was clear, and he could steer his course by the stars striking off in the southern direction. He traveled all night. The next day he fell on Hammer's old trace and followed its course to the south. In 2 days he reached Fort Washington, now Cincinnati. He remained a few days to recruit himself, and then he returned to his friends in Massey Station, where he was most joyfully received, as they felt great anxiety to his fate. The creek at the mouth of which he was taken was called after him, Donaldson's Creek, which the creek still retains his name and will retain when the event which gave birth to its name will be forgotten. About the year 1840. Mr. Donaldson was still living in the old settlement, the only one of the original settlers remaining there. He was a member of the convention which formed the Constitution of the state of Ohio, and lived to witness the gigantic development of the state, in which he was one of the first pioneers. During the same year, Massey had another narrow escape. He had advanced with his surveying party up the Little Miami till it reached the spot where the town of Xenia now stands, without the least molestation or obstruction from the Indians. Early one morning, as they were going to resume their labors, General Lyle perceived an Indian leveling his gun at Massey, who was in advance of the others. Quick as thought, he fired at the Indian, killing him dead. The party then advanced cautiously and soon discovered an encampment out of 150 Indians. It was now time to retreat. The Indians were in full advance, and it was a race for life. But the whole party succeeded in making good their flight and reached the station in safety. In the spring of 1793, the settlers of Massey Station commenced clearing some lots outside their picket fence, but it was immediately in the immediate vicinity here an incident occurred which will illustrate the consent of peril and of early settlers. A Miss Andrew Ellison, one of the settlers, cleared a lot immediately adjoining the fort. Mr. Andrew Ellison, one of the settlers, cleared a lot immediately adjoining the fort. He had completed the cutting of timber, rolled the logs together, and set them on fire. The next morning, the short time before the daybreak, Mr. Ellison opened one of the gates of the fort and went out to throw the logs together. By the time he had finished his job, a number of the heaps blazed up brightly, and he was passing from one to the other. He observed by the light of the fires 3 men walking briskly towards him. This did not alarm him, and in the least, although he said they were dark-skinned fellows, yet he concluded that there were the waives, whose complexions were very dark, going early to hunt. He continued to right his log heaps till one of the fellows seized him by the arm and called out in broken English, "How do? How do?" He instantly looked in their faces, and to his surprise and horror found himself in the clutches of 3 Indians. To resist was useless. He therefore submitted to his fate without any resistance or attempt to escape. The Indians quickly moved off with him in the direction of Paint Creek, where breakfast was ready, Miss Ellison sent one of her children to ask their father home, but he could not be found at the log heaps. His absence created no immediate alarm, as it was thought that he might have started to hunt after the completion of his work. Dinner time arrived, and Ellison not returning, the family became uneasy and began to suspect some incident had happened to him, or an accident. His gun rack was examined, and there hung his rifle and his pouch in the usual place. Massey raised a party and made a circuit around the place, and found, after some search, the trails of 4 men, one of whom had on shoes. And as Ellison had shoes on, the truth that the Indians had made him a prisoner was unfolded. And it was almost something in the time of the trail was in the light of the trail, and something was it's all blocked out. The writing's bad, sorry people. The trail was discovered. The party returned to the station. Next morning, the preparations were made by Massey and his party to pursue the Indians. In doing this, they found great difficulty, as it was so eagerly in the spring that the vegetation was not insufficient growth to show plainly the trail of the Indians, who took the precaution to keep on hard on the highland, where their feet could make little to no impression. Massey and his party, however, were uneagering as a pack of well-trained hounds, and found the trail to Paint Creek, when they found the Indians gained so fast on them that the pursuit was vain. They therefore abandoned it and returned to the station. The Indians took their prisoner to Upper Sandusky, compelled him to run the gauntlet. As Ellison was a large man and not very active, he received a severe flogging as he passed along the line. From this place he was taken to Lower Sandusky, and was again compelled to run the gauntlet, and was then taken to Detroit, where he was generously ransomed by a British officer for $100. He was shortly afterwards sent to his friend, the officer, to Montreal, from whence he returned home before the close of the summer the same year. Soon after this, another incident of a still more serious character occurred, and when it was remembered that it occurred less than 2 years before, our settlement was effected in the interior of this Chinito region, and the reader will readily conceive that our situation was not without perils. The incident of which I speak as follows. John Edgington, Shell Edgington, and another man started out on a hunting expedition toward Brush Creek. They had camped out 6 miles in the northeast direction of where Western Union now stands, and near Trevor's Tavern, on the road to Chillicothe. Maybe that's Chillicothe. Looks like Chillicothe. Sorry. To Maysville. The Edgertons now had good success in hunting, having killed a number of deer and bears. Of the deer killed, they saved the skins and hams alone. The bears they fleeced, that is, they cut off all the meat which adhered to the hide without skinning, and left the bones as a skeleton. They hung up the proceeds in their hunt and scaffolded out of the reach of the wolves and other wild animals, and returned home for pack horses. The 2 Edgingtons returned to the camp alone. No one apprehended danger, as the winter season was usually a time of repose for the Indian incursions. They arrived at their hunting camp aligned from their horses, and were preparing to strike a fire with a platoon of Indians. when a platoon of Indians fired upon them at the distance of not more than 20 paces. A shell Edgerton fell to arise no more. John was more fortunate. Oh, so a shell Edgerton, he got shot. John was fortunate. The sharp crack of the rifles and the horrid yells of the Indians as they leaped from their place of ambush frightened the horses, who took their track towards home at full speed. John Edgerton was very active on foot, and now of occasion offered which required his utmost speed. The Indians down their guns pursued him. Oh, they threw down their guns and pursued him, screaming and yelling in the most horrid manner. Edgerton ran no easy race. For about a mile, the Indians stepped into his tracks almost before the bending grass could rise. The uplifting tomahawk was frequently so near his head that he felt the edge. Every effort he made to save his life, and every exertion of the Indians was made to arrest him in his flight. At length he began to gain on his pursuers, and after a long race distanced them and safely reached home. It was a moment fearful and well contested race. The big Shawnee chief, Captain John, who headed the Indians on this occasion after peace was made and the Chillicothe settled, frequently gave the writer of this sketch an account of the race. He said that white man smart fellow, he run and I run, he run, and at least he run clear off from me. During the winter of 1792-3, Massey explored the valley of Pink Creek and part of the Shinto County. These excursions were full of peril, but the plan adopted by Massey was such as to insert the greatest possible security. He usually had 3 assistant surveyors. Each surveyor, including himself, was accompanied by 6 men, which made a mess of 7, and the whole party would amount to 28. Every man had a prescribed duty to perform. Therein operations and conducted in this manner. In front went the hunter, who kept in advance of the surveyor 200 or 300 yards looking for game, and prepared to give notice should any danger from Indians threaten. They then followed after the surveyors the 2 chainmen, marker and packhorse man, and the luggage, who always kept near each other to be prepared for defense in case of an attack. Lastly, 200 or 300 yards in the rear came a man called the Spot, whose duty it was to keep on the back trail and look out lest the party in advance might be pursued and attacked by surprise. Each man, surveyor, not expected to carry a rifle in his blank and such other articles as he might stand in need of. On the pack horse was carried the cooking utensils and such provisions as could be mostly conceived and taken. Nothing like bread was thought of. Some salt was taken to be used sparingly for subsistence. They depended alone on the game which the woods afforded, precluded by the unerring rifles. In this manner, it was the largest number of surveyors made in this district. When night came, 4 fires remained for cooking, that is one for each mess. Around these fires, till sleeping time arrived, the company spent the time in social glee, singing songs and telling stories. When danger was not apparent or immediate, they were as merry as a set of men as ever assembled. Resting time arrived. Massey always gave signal, and the whole party would leave their comfortable fires, carrying with them their blankets, their firearms, and their little bag walking in perfect silence 200 or 300 yards from their fires. They would then scrape away the snow and huddle down together for the night. Each mess formed one bed that they would spread down on the ground, and half of the blankets, reversing them, half for covering. The covering blankets were fastened together by skewers to prevent from slipping apart. Thus prepared the whole party, crouching down together on their rifles, or with their rifles, in their arms and their pouches under their heads for pillows, lying spoon fashion, with 3 heads one way and for the other, their feet extending to about the middle of their bodies. When one turned, the whole mess turned, or else the close range would be broken and the cold would be let in. Wow, that's called about comfortable sleeping, eh? In this way, they lay till broad daylight, no noise, scarcely a whisper, spring uttered during the night. When it was perfectly light, Massey would call up 2 of the men in whom he had the most confidence and send them to reconsider and make a circuit around the fires, lest an ambuscade might be formed by the Indians to destroy the party as they returned to their fires. This was an invariable custom in every variety of the weather. Self-preservation required this circumspection. If the immorality is due to the names of the heroes who have successfully labored in this field of battle, no less honors, and due to such men as Massey, who ran equal risk of life from danger and less prospect of escalade, and produced more lasting benefit to his country. In this manner, the winters of 1793 and 4 and 1794 and 5 were spent in exploring and surveying the valleys of the Cinco and Little Miami rivers and their tributaries. Right, wow, this is a long ass chapter. I tell you. Okay. One more page or two, and my eyes have had it, people. I tell you, I'm doing what I can. Hope you're all enjoying this. This is really interesting. I suppose you wouldn't want to be sleeping in one of their beds. 3 men one way, 4 men the other. Middle of winter, laying on snow in the middle of the woods, with Indians around you. Those got to be tough men, put it that way. An incident that occurred during the winter of 1794 and 5 will illustrate in some degree the perils of the work. Massey was at this time surveying the lands of the Buckskin Creek, near where its waters interlock with those of the Pink Creek. Late one evening, he came upon the tracks of Indians in the snow. Some of his men were dispatched to search out the Indian encampment, while others were sent in pursuit of the assailant surveyor, in order to collect the force into one body, that he might be prepared to attack or defend as circumstances might direct. A short time before sundown, his forces were collected, and in a few after the 2 men returned who had been sent to discover the Indian camp. They reported that there had been proceeding as near the Indians' encampment they proceeded the Indian encampment as near as they could with safety, and that it consisted of 8 to 10 tents, and that from the noise about the camp they had no doubt but that there was a large number of Indians. Massey thereupon concluded that it would be too hazardous to attack them while the snow was on the ground, believing it would endanger the whole party, as if would be compelled to retreat in circum with any wounded. He therefore resolved to desist from surveying and make a rapid retreat to his own station, not doubting that he would be pursued by the Indians, would have difficulty in tracking them through the snow. The line of march was formed from home by a party who traveled till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. Then they halted and remained till morning, when they had again resumed their march. Moving into the southern direction, about 12 o'clock, they came to a fresh trail which was made by 4 horses and 8 to 10 footmen. This trail was crossed diagonally and was again struck upon by after traveling a few miles. After a constellation which some of the most experienced of his men, Massey concluded the Indians whose trail had been crossed knew nothing of them, and determined to pursue them so long as they kept their direction in which they appeared then to be going. The pursuit of the Indians was kept up as fast as the men could walk till dusk without overtaking them. The party had then halted to consult as to their future operations. In a few minutes, the Indians were heard at work with their tomahawks, cutting wood and tent poles within a few hundred yards of the place where the party had halted. It was to vote whether the Indians' camp should be attacked immediately or whether they could postpone it till daylight. A majority were for lying by and attacking them in the daylight. 2 or 3 men were then sent to do some reconnaissance. Their camp was bringing away their horses. The horses were brought away, and preparations were made to lie by for the night. Massey, who was more thoughtful than the rest of the company, began to reflect on the critical situation of the party. He told them that he did not approve of the idea of postponing the attack till morning, as there was no doubt that they were rapidly pursued by the Indians from the head of Buckskin Creek, and by the waiting till morning, the pursuing Indians might come up from the course of the night, and when daylight appeared, they would find themselves between 2 fires. He said it was true the Indians might be destroyed more efficiently in daylight, but that it was dangerous to loiter away their time on a retreat, and advised that whatever they did to the Indians should be done quickly, and the march continued toward home. It was resolved to follow his advice. It was almost 2 hours in the night when this occurred. The day had been warm and had melted the snow, which was 8 inches deep and quite soft at the top. At night it began to freeze rapidly, and by this time there had been a hard crust on top. In this situation, the crust was broken by a man walking. On the calm night, it could be heard at a distance of about 300 yards. Massey, under these circumstances, prepared to attack the Indians forthwith. The men were formed in a single file, and their whipping sticks in their hands to steady them when walking. They then commenced moving towards the Indians, camping in the following manner. The foremost would walk about 20 steps, halt, then the next in line would move, one stepping on the tracks of the foremost to prevent any noise when breaking the crust of the snow. In this cautious and silent manner, they kept within about 25 yards of the Indians' encampment when the unexpected interruption presented itself, and a deep ravine was found between Massey and the camp, which was not perceived by the reconnaissance party. The Indians had not as yet laid down to rest and were singing and amusing themselves round their fires in the utmost self-security, not dreaming of danger in their own country. in the depth of the winter. The Battle of the Ravine conceded. Massey and his men, who were on the ground from the light of the Indian fires, after halting a few minutes on the bank of the ravine, Massey discovered a few paces above him a large log which had fallen across the ravine. On this log, he determined to cross the gully. 7 or 8 of the men, on their hands and knees, had crossed and were within not more than 12 or 15 paces of the Indians, in crouching low and turning to the right and to the left, and too many men at the same time got on the log, and as it was old and rotten, it broke in a loud crash. This startled the Indians, and the whites who had crossed over before the log had broke immediately fired into the Indian camp. Shooting as they ran, the Indians fled naked and without their arms. No Indian was killed in the camp, though their clothing and their blankets were found, stained with blood. No attempt was made to pursue them. Their camp was plundered of their horses and their arms, making altogether considerable booty. The party traveled the night until noon the next day, when they halted to cook some provisions and rest their wearied limbs, after taking some refreshments. Wow, quite an adventure. They loitered about their fires a short time and again commenced their march through snow and brush, and about midnight of the second day arrived in Manchester after a fatiguing march of 2 days and nights from the head of the Buckskin Creek. This brings down a narrative of events leading to the connection of our family and the history of the region till my father's first attempt to explore it with a view to its settlement. This was in 1795, when the day appointed for the rendezvous at Massey Station arrived, and there was assembled, including those my father, 2 congressions and from Pennsylvania, and about 60 individuals, all burning with ardent desire to see with their own eyes the country of whose fertility they had heard so much, and which seemed to them the land of promise. The party felt more secure from the attacks of the Indians because General Wayne was at that very time in treaty with them in Greensville, and therefore they pushed boldly forward to their interior. They were divided into 3 companies and led by Massey, one by Finley, and the third by Faltic, an older pioneer among the Indians. In a few days, they reached Paint Creek near the falls, then encampment for the night. And in the morning, they found they were in the vicinity of the body of Indians, and proceeding down the creek soon came within hearing of their horses' bells, and it was now too late to draw back, and the action within the Indians was inevitable. Some of the company were what was called raw hands, and that is Nicias, tuned to border life and adventure. Full of enthusiasm, they had often expressed a desire to smell Indian powder. One of the party who had fought during the Revolutionary War and also with the Indians resorted upon these vaunting fellows. If you get my smell, you will run. I am very much mistaken. The vaunted encouragement was now brought to the test. Okay, I'm going to end right there. That's been really good. I got a lot read. We'll continue there next time. Thank you all. I'm glad you could join me. And, it's been a good day. I hope you enjoyed that. Let me know if you want to keep on doing this, and we'll see what happens. But we'll continue and see where this goes. But it's some good Indian stories. So thanks for coming. Be the frequency you want to receive. Love y'all.